And you can't even drive? I can. Are you stupid, eh? Are you a stupid fool? Well, why can't you drive then? You can't even drive! A bit grey today, isn't it?
I'm here. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Deepest Lore. And who is back? Pharaoh has returned, friends. How you doing, Pharaoh?
Yes, very good. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you've had a hiatus from Deepest Lore that has extended what, like 10 shows or something.
It's a little while at least. But yeah, no, I've had a child in between, and but no, I've very much enjoyed the Bowie streams. Those were excellent. Got me through some 3 o'clock wake ups with the child. So,
well, more importantly, congratulations, Pharaoh. I hope.
Oh, thank you.
Everything going well. It's actually, I don't know, in a strange way, it's kind of, yeah, you do the 3 a.m. stuff, but it's actually like less work. Am I wrong? Well, they just sleep, right?
Well, yeah, they're meant to sleep. I'll tell you, it is definitely, this is child number 2, and it's about 4 times as hard. Because you have to, so normally when it's just number 1, you could do that and then you could just sleep in the rest of the day. But then with, because you've got number 2, you have to wake up and then just do a normal day on top of it. So that's when it starts to get a little bit too much.
Oof. You see, everybody says, oh, you know, the second one's easier, but that was lies, isn't it? It's lies.
Now, I would say probably about like number 3 or 4, it probably gets easy because you get the older ones to look after the small ones. That's like a big bonus. But I think it's definitely hard. We all know that you're min-maxing stats on your kids, your child anyway, maximizing intelligence with a single child.
Using Thomas Sowell studies about single children. Exactly. However, she has started talking, and she's, not yet 3, so that's a blow. Because he wrote a book.
Is that a bad thing?
Well, he wrote a book called Late Talking Children and Genius, basically. Like Einstein, for example, was a late talking child. I was a late talking child, Pharaoh. And I don't know, there's some like weird correlation between not saying I'm Einstein, by the way, but I think the unspoken thing is that Thomas Sowell himself was a late talking
right
child.
Okay, that's it. This is the whole thing. It's just
then he kind of narcissistically proved that means you're clever.
Whenever I hear stories about her, though, she does seem very advanced for her age. So I think she'll be smart enough.
Oh yes, I mean, okay. So anyway, just before we get going, Pharaoh, anything you would like to promote, sir?
Well, we've got the summer sale going on right now. Not summer sale. Is it autumn or winter? We're calling it.
It's the autumn sale.
Autumn sale. Sorry. And obviously my course, Foundations of Entrepreneurship, it's a classic. We've had a lot of people complete it now. Been very impressed. You too can one day become an oligarch of power like Elon Musk if you take the course.
Shall we play it? Even though we're talking about adverts, should we play the advert?
Oh no! You did it quite a lot recently. I think it's
all right. Foundations of if you want the 25% off Foundations of Entrepreneurship, you know what the promo code is.
Merit, pure merit, such merit, such merit.
All right, that'll do.
I loved you playing that to Bat because I think he had no idea the context of the meme, and was just like, why is AA playing like a Peterson mega cut, a Merit mega cut at me?
He did laugh, to be fair to him, but it is kind of. This is why I always say that bringing guests into the unpopular opinions environment is very odd. That's why I always have people to our stream. Because D sometimes says, "Why didn't you bring them on unpopular opinions?" I'm like, they would just be lost. You know.
The uninitiated.
I learned once years ago with that guy. Who's that Iranian guy?
I know you. I know who you mean though. The
Towsy or something. I mean, he's a bit of a Tory boy, to be fair. But,
yeah.
So anyway, get 25% off Foundations of Entrepreneurship and all the other courses, of course. And join the channel, buy a mug, do the Substack, etc. Now, Farah, what are we gathered to talk about today?
Well, it's been a little while since we've looked at some of the fundamentals of propaganda, and I thought it'd be interesting to talk about words. And this is partly kind of like some kind of thoughts and analysis of my own about the power that words have over people, but also I've got it's a bit of a dive into the golden age of copywriting in advertising as well. So that there was a short period, I would say like 30 or 40 years, where a lot of adverts were heavily copy focused, and it's often forgot about, apart from like real advertising nerds. So this is partly kind of getting people woke and aware to that words do have power over people, and secondly, to try and give you the skills to not be like programmed by government advertising, basically, so you can kind of look and see yourself. So that's the kind of aim of it, hopefully.
Great. And it's just worked out that it's episode 101, which kind of reminded me of Room 101.
Yes, exactly. Yeah,
speaking about propaganda and words, you know.
Yeah, exactly. Like Orwell's really interesting because I think he realizes the importance of the control of words, and it's interesting in my mind how the state, is trying to reduce the number of words, because I think partly that is down to control, because if you can kind of reduce the number of words and you control the meaning, they have that. Was it the dictionary? Is it the IngSoc?
Yes, Newspeak they call it. Yeah,
Newspeak dictionary or whatever comes out every single year. Not only are they controlling the meanings of things, but they're also making sure that you don't go outside of the boundaries. Because if you control the words, you can control the thoughts of people, I believe, and hopefully we'll kind of show some of that today.
Yeah, I'll just say really quickly is that Orwell, I really do believe that Orwell, it's become like a real cliche to talk about, we're living in such Orwellian times, isn't it? Right.
Yeah,
but
yeah,
he really does have deep insight into this topic in particular, the relationship between thought and language, essentially, and how you can use, what do they call it? A thought terminating cliche.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what the state loves to use, is the thought terminating cliche. It's actually been interesting to watch how some of those have stopped working in a way. Like the power of the word racist, for example, used to. I remember like 6-7 years ago, used to stop everybody in their tracks. Now some of the guys watching this would probably be insulted if they weren't called racist. Right? It's kind of like, so we have seen some of the limits of this as well. But anyway, let's start then.
And it'd be great. Just feel free to chip in at any time as well. And obviously your literature background, I think, is important. But before we go into some examples, I just wanted to talk through again just some of the foundations from an aesthetic philosophical perspective. I know this could be a bit boring to start with, but I think it is super important. So if you kind of scroll down, I just done a quick recap in terms of traditional understandings about the power of words, and I thought I'd start us off with a classic quote on the next slide from the great bard of our time,
Morrissey.
Yeah, Morrissey. Does the body rule the mind, or does the mind rule the body? I don't know, and I think it's an interesting question about what drives human action at the same time. Is it our lower or our base senses? Is it things like hunger and, again, just the raw need to procreate? Or is it a higher form of rational thoughts? And I think Morrissey sums it up well here. This discussion about what drives us and how is man made is an eternal question that is yet to be fully answered. But I thought I would present just a couple of some of the kind of classical thoughts and then compare it to modern understanding. If we kind of scroll down, I think the most important initial understandings of it are to define man as a combination of body and soul, right? So there's a physical presence and our soul, which kind of controls us, puppets us, and this kind of understanding is, as I understand it, across all ancient civilizations. Basically, they all have this idea of the body and the soul, this ethereal, non-materialistic concept.
I mean, without getting too bogged down, this is essentially Augustine's two cities, right? The city of God and the city of earth, or whatever, the temporal world and the transcendent world.
Yeah, exactly. And Augustine was heavily influenced by Platonic Aristotelian thinking, and he's actually super important for like the medieval view of the body and the soul. Basically, he's like the go-to guy. The go-to guy. Let's just talk about the soul a little bit here, because I think one of the most significant, the two most significant thinkers are Aristotle and Plato on this. If we just scroll down a bit, sorry, and Aristotle's interesting because he starts to differentiate the soul into different parts. So we see it as, or when we talk about it, we talk about it as this amorphous, homogeneous thing. But he says actually there's different like levels to the soul. My favorite being the vegetative soul, the vegetable soul, as often known, and this is actually like the part of us which isn't rational, but it kind of forces us to do stuff. So this is kind of to do with like reproduction, with growth. You've then got the kind of sensory.
I just want to say really quickly, Pharaoh. I know a guy with a very great vegetative soul. His name is Turnip.
Turnip, yeah, very good. Excellent. I mean, he is a man just purely driven by his need to grow. That's why he's so tall. You then got this kind of middle layer, which is all the kind of layer that animals will also have, this kind of sensitive layer, and this idea of senses being a combination of the body, because you need like your eye to actually see or to interface with the world, but it's also this idea of interpreting the world around you. So, for example, a good example I always think about is the sommelier. They call him the nose. He's a man with a nose like anyone else, but he's special because he has the ability to interpret smells better than other people. I think John Dee is a bit of a nose with his love of perfume, and he could tell you about the different notes in a different perfume or the different smells.
I have to mention this. If you ever watch the old Roald Dahl TV series Tales of the Unexpected, there is a really funny and unexpected episode about a sommelier, and he's got a huge nose, and he can identify any wine by date and specific kind of, not just region, like specific town. It's a funny episode. Anyway, I thought I'd mention that. Carry on.
It's interesting because it's like one of those like truly aesthetic professions, I think, and shows this point quite well, that there is this not everyone senses the world in the same way, in a different way. One of my great theories is that different ethnoses have the ability to sense things at different levels, and that affects their cultural and their ethical piece. And going back.
I mean, sorry. Just to mention that there's a as Bronze Age Pervert calls him, the steampunk godfather of racism.
Yes.
Arthur de Gobineau. He believed that this was so total, right, that, for example, so I'll just say he was a racist. So he put blacks at the bottom of the hierarchy, right? But he said that blacks were like really kind of tuned into kind of this sort of thing, sensory stuff. And so it made them like really good at certain things like artistic endeavors, all the stereotypical things that people will say, like dancing, singing, rhythm, all of this sort of stuff. But he believed that it was so total that actually all artistic endeavors in human history come down to some sort of admixture with what he called black blood, right? If you really start understanding Gobineau, he's not really talking about races as we understand them. He's talking about kind of general spirits, I guess. But there is this spirit that's it's kind of tuned into the body in a strange way, but it's responsible in his view for. So he's like, oh, the Greeks didn't produce any proper art until they conquered this region and admixed with the people with the dark hair, basically, and that's where you get all the kind of Greek culture and stuff from. I mean, it's probably not true, but it's kind of an interesting way of thinking about this sort of thing. Yeah,
I definitely think there's something there in terms of, like I said, there is a genetic element to culture and aesthetics. For example, if you were to replace an Englishman as we know it with anyone else, even like a Russian, for example, and you almost did like a cuckoo or whatever, you swapped them from birth, or swapped an entire like a town from birth, they would end up, even if they were raised as this entirely different culture, because of their sheer because of the way they interface with the sensory world through this kind of animal soul. I think it would be different, basically. So it's an interesting concept that isn't talked about.
Yeah. I mean, I'll just say, I mean, again, I wouldn't treat these as kind of scientific theories. They're much more kind of metaphysical in nature, Gobineau's ideas. But he also says that there's such a thing as a yellow man, right? And the yellow man is like purely pragmatic in nature. But he believes that all of Europe was populated by these yellow men before a kind of chivalric, what he calls whites, but really a chivalric man comes and conquers it. But underneath this pragmatic tendency is always there, right? And it's kind of interesting reading his descriptions, because the yellow man's like kind of ideal life is basically an exact description of what we would call today the bugman life, right? They want a kind of mass culture, mass conformist culture, geared towards kind of ease, if that makes any sense. Whereas so in his view, most people in Europe are some admixture of these kind of chivalric men, or Aryans as he calls them, and these yellow men, and it really just depends on. So like in his reading, for example, the French Revolution was a revolt of the yellows against the whites, right? But I mean, looking at this, it's basically a version of the vegetative soul, the yellow one, right?
Yes.
I mean, he orders them differently, but it's just kind of interesting to think about, though, given the propensities that we see, because our culture at the moment, I would say, is geared towards the vegetative soul. Looking at these three things, it's not geared towards the sensitive one, or indeed the rational one.
Definitely not. Well, again, and I think it's an interesting reflection for us with how we speak to people. Obviously, the organized minority is king, but you still have to interface with the population at the same time. And I think what the right is good at is the rational soul, but in some ways it needs to, it doesn't tap into the sensitive or the vegetative very well. And that's, again, a reflection for the future. But should we keep on going? Let's so this split into this area. The key thing here is that so for example, with the senses, you need both the body and the soul to work together. So there's this moment where there's a thing that requires both body and soul in unison, and that's what was kind of described as the passions. We've heard about kind of passionate as like a verb or a describer. but they see it as a kind of like a moving force in humanity, which is part body, part soul, that drives people. It's not, and like the rational mind sits above it at the same time, if that makes sense. So it's just a driver. It tends to be a little bit more kind of what we would call subconscious today in our Freudian understanding of the world. Now, if we scroll down again, there's some interesting thoughts about this kind of passions. One other thing is to mention, Plato's thoughts on mimesis, or how art is created, and both him and Aristotle are obsessed with this idea of art being a form of imitation. So, for example, the heroic poets would have seen an actual hero during the age of heroes, and then use that as inspiration for the actions of their characters at the same time. So already there's something interesting here where, look, if art is a form of imitation, or it can be a form of imitation, we can transmit ideas or states of being through art and words. So when we look at Odysseus or Aeneas, we're getting these ideas of what it is to be a hero, or what it is to be a man, as a form of imitation from actual heroes or actual genuine men. So already there's an interesting power that words have over the populace. And actually, basically Plato recognized, if you scroll down again, recognized this, and during his Republic, he has a famous moment where he essentially kicks out all of the poets. And this was a nice little extract that I found from some analysis on this, which I've taken verbatim. The poet, with his words and phrases, is able to convince listeners that he knows what he speaks of, such as the sweet influence which melody and rhythm by nature have. Poetry, including the narratives of others' lives, appeal to the emotions. Well, that would be the passions, really. This is a modern reading of it. It feeds and waters the passions instead of drying them up. She lets them rule, although they ought to be controlled if mankind are ever to be to increase in happiness and virtue. In Book 10, Plato concludes that poetry must be banished from the hypothetical ideal society. So it's interesting that already from this early age, number one, the power of the word is recognized, and that number two, the classic response is to ban it. Interestingly, that there is this tension between the kind of Homeric age, where the poets are in control and they're saying this is what it is to be virtuous, but like Socrates, Plato or Socrates, he's saying actually no, it's you've got to be rational about things. Now, interestingly, you go.
Well, I put out a bit of a cryptic tweet the other day, which got quite a bit of engagement, where I said Socrates was the first shitlib, changed my mind. And I was kind of getting towards like, well, I'm writing this book, Prophets of Doom.
Yeah.
Vico, who's the first person I talk about in that book, really, or the first person with an actual dedicated chapter. He basically argues that, you mentioned the age of heroes, right? He has a whole chapter called The Real Meaning of Homer, okay? And he says, listen, you've got to understand that when we're looking back and reading Aristotle and Plato, they are guys from a different era from Homer, right?
Yes, yeah.
Homer belonged to a rough age where men only ate meat, where men were kind of brutal but heroic, like everything was run by these heroic values in Homer's time, and it was run by what Vico calls the poetic way of thinking. Okay, when you get Socrates, who is, if you ever read Plato, this is going to sound odd, but Socrates is a bit like a kind of Gen X Daria. Like he's a kind of almost like a Reddit tier kind of.
He is. He's really annoying.
He's such a little smart ass, and he's always kind of coming up with little questions and all that sort of stuff. And Vico says that this is the beginning of the end. This isn't like we think, oh, this is the high point of Greece. But Vico's saying, actually, as soon as these guys start doing this, they kill the poetry. In the Republic's case, quite literally they throw it out, right? They banish it from the Republic. And Vico's saying that as soon as you do this, the kind of the vitality or the lifeblood of what built the civilization is dead, and thus is born the age of men. And in his conception, you get what he calls the barbarism of reflection, which is a kind of a move to this kind of purely materialistic, rationalistic way of thinking about the world that worships reason above all else. And once you start worshipping reason, you can no longer tap into the quote-unquote poetry or the spirit of Homer, and eventually you become so sophisticated that you become individualistic, you become atomized, you become, or you start to think that you're more clever than the fear of the gods. You start to develop your own morality, and with all of that, you basically end up reverting to a kind of animalistic state in a strange way, because you've lost the animating spirit, and eventually a second barbarism comes and the whole cycle starts again. But that is a kind of Vico's kind of counter Enlightenment, anti-rationalist way of thinking, but it relates very much to this. What we're talking about today.
Yeah, definitely. I actually, you'll see in a second, I stole one of his graphs and adapted a little bit in a second. So so I would agree. Now, one other observation I want people to note is that he and the philosophers of the time were obsessed with controlling the passions. They don't want people to have passions, right? Because they're irrational at the same time. Now, interestingly, the medievals took this and they said actually the passions can be positive, and I guess it's kind of like it can be useful. But there are good ones and bad ones at the same time, so it's a more complicated thing. But let's keep on going, and we'll see how this relates to some of the ads later. Now, just speaking of the medieval view, if we this is the classic example I always go on about, which is from Dante, who is at he is at the interface between the medieval age and I guess the kind of the quote unquote the Renaissance, but it's really the kind of rediscovering of some of that kind of Socratic thought. Now, Dante, when he was younger, was a writer of romance poetry. So romance poetry is all about basically great loves of history, but they always focused on an affair at the same time. So it's this kind of like very passionate moment, and during his great epic poetry, when he descends to hell, he encounters a couple that were corrupted by one of these romance novels and ended up having an affair. So it's kind of like he is reflecting on the fact that these two. If you go to the next slide, I've got some of the actual text itself. But yeah,
can I just mention?
Yes.
Doesn't he look a bit like Columbo? This guy.
But I think this is a Burne Jones. So there you go. Yeah, it's Columbo and his great love.
And I just love the idea that Dante's like I don't know, what does "oh lasso" mean? Oh no,
I don't know.
Look what I've done. Okay,
Dante and Virgil there. So there you go. This is Francesca speaking here, and she says, one day we reading were for our delight of Lancelot, how love did him enthrall, alone we were, and without any fear. Full many a time our eyes drew together that reading, and drove the colour from our faces. But one point only was it that o'ercame us, when we read of the much longed for smile, being by such a noble loved kisser, this one who near from me shall be divided, kissed me upon the mouth all palpitating. Galetio was the book, and he who wrote it, that that day no further did we read therein. So it's an interesting moment, because it's kind of like Dante's putting it in there as almost like an atonement for his romantic work. But it is this idea that people can be inspired or can be driven, their kind of passions riled up by text and word and poetry. And basically you can move people. Now two other quick thoughts on the kind of power of words before we do some of the analysis. One other thing I wanted to say was that it seems to me that all ages have required words in their development. And if we think about epic poems, you've obviously got the kind of Iliad and the Odyssey, the Aeneid, I can't say the Persian one,
Shahnameh.
There we go, exactly. So it seems to me that there is this requirement for words and for listening and for poetry and for reading, in terms of like almost like one of our most base desires, if that makes sense. I don't know about the Chinese though. I was thinking I don't know if any Chinese great works, but no doubt there is one.
One comment I have and one question here. The comment is just about this text here, Shahnameh, this epic poem by Ferdowsi. There's a bit of a story around that poem, which is that he wrote that in about 1000 AD, 1010 AD, something like that, right? So about 1,000 years ago. But he wrote it after a 400-year attempt, because Iran was conquered by the Arabs in 650, something like that, and they tried to Arabize the Iranians or the Persians for literally 400 years. They and they tried to do it in a pretty brutal way as well, like forced conversions, and they did succeed in killing the Zoroastrian religion, and they made Persia Islamic, which it continues to this day. But if you could think, well, this is still like the people of like Cyrus the Great, and it's that same civilization. It's fallen on hard times type thing, and it's now under foreign Arab rule. But this poet Ferdowsi wrote this national epic, Shahnameh, where he basically tells a kind of mythic history of the Persian people. And this poem was said to be so powerful, and is still in Iran today. If you go around Iran, you'll see statues of Ferdowsi everywhere. It is so significant in their history that it is single-handedly credited with keeping Farsi alive as a language, why Iranians speak Farsi today and not Arabic, for example, how the Persians' culture and civilization basically endured and didn't become Arab. So, I mean, we're talking about the power of words. This poem basically saved the nation in, according to kind of Persian mythos. And you could speak to any actual Iranian today, and if you mention Shahnameh, they'd tell you some version of what I told you. So it's an incredibly important text for that one civilization. The question I got for you, Pharaoh, is that there's one text that's not on here that actually, which is the Bible. It starts with the word. Have you got a bit on this later on?
I haven't. I mean, this is just the longest epic poems. I was trying to think about like prehistory, really, or like these kind of super early civilizations. But yes, obviously, Jesus as the word. I didn't actually put anything on there, to my shame. But again, Jesus as logos. That's important.
Do you think it's significant that the Bible starts with the word? That it starts with this idea of it's like kind of precedes everything else. First there was the word,
Yes, no, definitely, and obviously it kind of ties into the text themselves, so it's part of a text, so it shows the kind of importance and the power of scrolls. Obviously, in the kind of during the Jewish phase, they would read, they would recite and read off the scrolls. Part of being a man is to memorize the scrolls themselves. So I do think there is something about the idea of the word dwelling in someone. It's the same thing as you said for the Persian, the Shahnameh. By reading something, understanding it lives within you in a sort of way, and so yeah, I think so. That ties into ideas of the Holy Spirit and stuff.
I'll just mention, by the way, someone in the chat is saying, "Oh, quantity isn't everything. It could read like the phone book." Shahnameh. It's actually like a proper, like, it's just battles and kind of it's really like a kind of version of Homer or something. It only written a lot later, but there's a lot of like mythic element, like there's this one guy and snakes grow out of his back and things like that, so it's kind of, it mixes real history with
there's like
magic,
Sasanian folklore in there. There's like the phoenix in there, and there's the samovar, which is like the kind of half like lion, half flying creature and stuff like that. It's pretty It's pretty interesting. So it is a rekindling of like Persian folk tales as well. Okay, so the I guess the learning from that was people need words, and then something interesting that I was thinking of while reflecting over one of Blake's lesser thought of works. So this is his Songs of Innocence and of Experience. You can see here, showing the two contrary states of the human soul, and this was like a poetry anthology that he pulled together himself with poems themed around that very nature of innocence and experience. Well, words can make us experienced about different things, just in the same way that we can learn what it was like to be a Bronze Age hero in the form of Odysseus. We can learn about other things too. So, for example, this is a weird thought. Okay, so excuse me. Why have there never been any furries before the modern age? If it was a natural, a normal thing, and what it seems to me is that there is this this idea of experience about learning about stuff, and sometimes that can be really good, and sometimes that can be really bad, and you can spread it as well. So this, you sort of mentioned this the other day about that girl who was killed. You don't want to see or read more about it, because once you've experienced that, you've lost some innocence at the same time. And actually, sometimes it's good to be innocent about certain things, but conversely, we want to experience those transcendent, important features of mankind. We want to experience what it is like to be a hero, or to be a good or virtuous man at the same time. So there's an interesting playoff here where words can make us experience about things. We can unlock certain things that we've never thought of before through word. So it is a very dangerous thing when left unfettered.
Yeah, and I should mention that this idea that you're talking about is baked into the Faustus story, I guess. And Spengler, he talks about Western man as being Faustian. This is the Faustian civilization, right? One of the strange things about that is that once you've gone there, there's no like going, but there's no like reloading.
Once
you can't reload the game, you can't go back, you can't. It's like losing your virginity, right? You can't.
Yeah, 100%. I totally agree with that, especially with like stuff you see or stuff you hear, or even I always remember like hearing something at school. Someone would say like a phrase or something you've never heard of, and then you could have looked up what it means. But once you've lost that innocence, you can't unlearn those things from your head, if that makes sense. And now you're part of that at the same time. So I think that's interesting in terms of like unlocking a part of our soul or who we are.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to sound odd, but like, do you remember the first moment that you saw your parents as kind of flawed, normal human beings, and not like kind of these superheroes? Or like, I don't know, I can't remember exactly when it was, but I kind of had this moment where I was like, oh, they're just people. So they're just kind of normal. Do you know what I mean?
No, exactly.
And this is like kind of in the imagination of a child or whatever. This is like a world-shattering moment because you can't ever go back to your prior view of who they were, or like, I don't know, discovering that Santa Claus isn't real. Or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. That's another good example. A myth is told about something, and when the myth is shattered, you can't pretend like, if you just pretend like it's normal again, it's a cope, you know. Interestingly, Blake personally thought that innocence was the superior to experience, and that's why a lot of the romantic thoughts around the orphan and these kind of like young protagonist, I can't say it. You know, protagonists feature very prominently in the work. But what I'm saying is that it can be a good thing, can be a bad thing. So let's have a quick summary and get into the meat of it. So I think the power of words are in three different ways. Firstly, you have to feed the soul, like it fulfills a basic need, and so people will be looking for poetry or words if you don't provide it for them. Number one. Number two, it has that power to raise the passions. It can move people to action, and then thirdly, you know, this idea of innocence and experience. You can educate man. Now, if you scroll down, the real question isn't whether the words have this power. It's to what ends. And in the same way, we can educate man in virtue or vice. We can bring him to. We can raise the passions to create great art, or to set fire to half of America. You know, so I think these are almost like eternal truths, but the person who controls the words and the media that delivers them controls the man in the, or certainly those kind of more base elements that we talked about. Now, again, I think the man who is in control of his passions and the man who is rational or and virtuous is able to avoid these tricks. But I think the common man isn't trained in the same kind of way, and doesn't again, this may sound patronizing or paternalistic, and it is, but they don't have the ability to control themselves, and I think this is fundamentally the problem we have with our age. We treat everyone the same, we give them the same access to all kinds of knowledge, and then expect them to be in control, while people who haven't prepared their minds, like someone like UAA, I would say, you know, you could give you any book and you wouldn't be swayed by it. You'd be questioning it all the way through, and you'd be referencing all your other works at the same time, and it would have to be pretty significant to change your worldview. While, you know, we talk about the Zoomers switching ideology, they're like these kind of men not in control of their passions. They're just swayed by, I'm this, I'm that, I've read this thing, I've read that thing, and now I'm this, etc. They're just kind of, and again, I think it is a genuine problem, both in terms of educating the future, but also there's a susceptibility to man fundamentally through this, and this is what propaganda is. Propaganda is the exploitation of the passions and the innocence of men. Now, if we just kind of scroll down quickly, we can look at some examples. Oh yeah, this is my version of Vico's diagram here. You know, here are the different ages, and you got to ask, what is the different aim at the same time. So again, you mentioned Vico's Homeric poetic age, and they're trying to emphasize the heroic all the time. Socrates is trying to emphasize the rational, but in the age that we're in, that I've called commu capital, is both interestingly, both the communists and the capitalists want efficiency. You know, the communists like want little workers all working together for the commune, but the capitalists want the same thing. And it's interesting, keep that idea of the aim of efficiency in mind when thinking about propaganda. And obviously capital is in control of the media, so that's what they're trying to turn people into. You know, they're trying to turn people into efficient machines as opposed to heroic men.
I'll just mention really quickly that a strange aspect of Vico's thought, and this is why I've been saying, is that in some strange way we need to reclaim the postmodern pharaoh, which is a conversation for a different day, I suppose. But one of the reasons I'm saying that is that in Vico's conception, these kind of zeitgeists, if you want, are all encompassing. They flow through everything, right? And just like we were talking about, you cannot go back to being a virgin if you've lost your virginity, right?
Yeah.
In his view, once you've kind of deconstructed the heroic and the poetic, you can't just like suddenly go back there. It's like, I mean, the example I would give: imagine going to your local church and just behaving in all ways like a kind of 10th century knight. They think you were mad. your priest would probably throw you out eventually, right? I mean, because you'd seem you would be so out of kilter with your time that you would be processed as being basically insane.
Yeah.
Or vice versa, right? I mean, take Richard Dawkins and like stick him in the 8th century or something, and they'd think he was insane as well. I'm sure of it. So anyway,
they'll set fire to him within a day, no doubt.
Yeah, he'd be killed. Without doubt, Dawkins would be killed.
Yeah. I mean, I think it'd be really good to do a cigar stream on the like reclaiming the postmodernists, because I think it is very interesting, especially the points about cultural relativism. And I think I do think you can't fully embrace it. I think this it is a meme, the traditional postmodernist, but there is an element to it where I think you have to pull in some other elements as well to make it work. But in my mind, in fact, Mary Harrington was talking to Oren the other day, and again, it's kind of like that. Everyone keeps bringing up this point. There's nothing left to conserve. All we can do now is to create a new age, but I don't know what that is, and I don't know what the aim of it will be. But it shouldn't be efficiency. I know that. So we should remove.
Yeah, but one day, tales will be told of the academic agent and of Morgoth, poet of the North. But like in those tales, literally, I'll be a wizard, and and Morgoth will be some kind of like sage, and the
Fisher King,
Thomas 777, the shaman. But like, they have to be mythologized, and like people actually have to actually believe, this guy was shooting fireballs in the age of reason, things like that. But they have to actually believe it. Today we would only laugh at such things, but
yeah, it's interesting
in this new age. I'm telling you. Anyway, carry on.
Okay. I've just done a quick point on modern views on the body and the soul. I guess the key thing is that in the late 19th century, there's two big things happen. Firstly, the wave of kind of Enlightenment thought about man, and also this kind of the anatomy stuff that went on. If you can scroll down again, and also Freud is super important in this, where the soul is replaced with the mind, and concepts of the passions are replaced by emotions. So rather than having the passion swelled up and you're moved to do something, it's all about how do you feel. This makes me angry, this makes me sad. Well, there's two interesting things here. Firstly, the soul itself is removed, but emotions are not the same as the passions. Passions move people and emotions don't. They're fundamentally contained and insular. But I think this is a huge oversight in terms of how people work, and I think what basically Bernays worked out was that the passions still exist, because all this idea of the emotions happens way earlier than you think. It happens in like the almost the late 18th century, tied into this wave of enlightenment. It is this kind of rational idea where the rational mind is trying to remove these lower elements. But I think what someone like Bernays realized was that there are still these lower elements of the soul that I can manipulate and use to control people. So this is how we see ourselves, or how society sees each other. This is how things are taught in school. But the fundamental problem is it misses out those the kind of lower guttural level, and because of that, I think this is a huge blind spot in today's society, and why we're so susceptible to propaganda, because it doesn't realize that words can move people. Words in this worldview, words make you feel sad or make you feel angry, but then it stays in yourself. In my mind, words make you go and change your habits. Words make you go and buy a product. Words go and make you put your children into like a trans thing.
I mean, just going back to my little joke about, one day people will think of me as a wizard type thing. There is actually, like, I mean, I don't know, think about stuff like Jacob's ladder in the Bible, or like, maybe Prospero in Shakespeare's Tempest, right? He has a book and he has a staff, and he's literally a wizard, right? He's a mage of some sort. In Shakespeare's time, they really did think that words had an almost supernatural force behind them. That rhetoric, they were all into Seneca, incidentally, but they really did think that words had a kind of transformational capacity to them, such that in fact, there was the real life wizard John Dee, not our John Dee, but the
the
that
OG,
John Dee.
John Dee.
I'm just saying that the concepts were bound up in the Elizabethan and the Jacobean age. They really saw the power of the word as being something that was almost dangerous, almost supernatural. So
100%. And like I said, it's only recently where we've put this hood of ignorance upon ourselves, and we are being exploited because of it. I believe. Okay, let's quickly move on, because I haven't even got to any of the bits yet. Oh yeah, there we go. We talked about that already, so we can let's keep on going.
This is going to require a part 2. I can feel it already.
No, 100% not. No, keep on going. So, like I said, during that kind of Edwardian era, I think that the first understandings about that actually the passions do still exist, and they can be exploited, happens in what I call this first age of propaganda. And between the two wars, basically, you go from advertising and propaganda to being laughably unconvincing, to being very advanced and clever in the way that it taps into the power of words in the 3 ways we talked about before. Now, obviously, we've covered this in a couple of streams before, but I wanted to highlight a couple of examples in the context of this kind of framework I've pulled together. If you scroll down, you can see a couple of examples. AA? Okay, I think it's just turned to me now, so I'll try and fill in the time while we wait for AA to come back.
There
we go.
I've switched to the other one now. It seems to be stronger. So, all right. What are we looking at here?
Oh yeah, scroll back one slide. Sorry. So I was talking about ideas of propaganda stripping us from innocence. Well, there's an interesting idea here. What is our conception? Okay, what was the English conception of who a German was? Most people wouldn't have met a German previously before the First World War. Most people would have, maybe they encountered them briefly through products, maybe read German text, etc. So that idea and conception of the German has already been created through words. Now, what if you change what those words are and tell a different story and say, actually, the German you knew and thought of is totally different? And I find all of the black propaganda around the rape of Belgium really interesting. So for those who don't know, this is the attempt to mark First World War Germans as savages who raped innocent women, etc., during their invasion. And this is literally from a newspaper itself, and you can see this is a diary from I think a journalist who was working there. So what they've done is they've corrupted the innocence of people. People thought that Germans were perfectly nice, and they've put a new idea in their heads of the Germans as being these horrific barbarian people. Now, in the fullness of time, we know this is a lie. So, or certainly the so-called rape of Belgium was massively overplayed in terms of what actually happened. But that already can, in my mind, show like the fact that you can turn a nation against a totally different, like a nation that you're at peace with only a year before. If you read what happened during the First World War in terms of like German shops being destroyed, and you know what? In fact, our a good analogy is the reaction to Russians. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Russian shops being destroyed, or Russians being assaulted. People saying, "Oh, they're like Russian citizens are worse than dogs. They should have their citizenship revoked, etc., etc." Just because of an article, it doesn't matter about the personality or the lived experience. It's because I read somewhere that Russia is bad. It's changed how people conceive things. Okay, here's another interesting thing in terms of innocence. I think if you scroll down,
I just wanted to say, by the way, even though the details of the rape of Belgium may be a lie, I do wonder if there's some deeper esoteric truth to the idea that the Germans are secretly barbarians, because they were, the Teuton man, the Germanic tribes, and so on. They were originally the barbarians. So.
Yes, again, in my mind, barbarian just means like violent and uncultured, which I don't think. I think the uncultured is not fair to the Germans. I would say violent and kind of like that's that kind of cool reasoning, which means they'll make decisions without, again, we are a romantic nation in many ways. I think we are that. So I think we are different in that respect. I don't think that they like raped people in the same kind of way. I think, or like stabbed babies with their bayonets. I don't think they are that
no.
that bad, Okay, so another interesting area. I don't know if you know much about the Soviet agitprop movement that happened during early communism, and this is one of so agitprop is literally I think it's like slang for like agitated propaganda or something like that.
Yes.
But basically it's theater groups going out into the Russian countryside and teaching serfs about what's going on, basically. So if you imagine that the revolution that happened was mainly confined to the towns and cities of Russia, right? And so you had this huge long tail of people who were just like like people who were serfs previously and were perfectly happy with their lives. Well, Lenin couldn't have those people like being a happy serf. He doesn't want a happy serf, so he has to educate them on how they're actually being oppressed by the man or by the Tsar. And so you have hundreds and thousands of these. There was literally like they call it Lenin's train going out to the countryside and educating people through the form of poetry, pamphlets, and performance to try to basically to shatter their mythology. And so this is why I'm saying that there's an interesting end of innocence in the population where like you have that meme about people living happily under Nazi Germany or whatever. That's they probably were happy. The same was probably true with the Russian serf. Perfectly.
I think the Marxist name for this was false consciousness, right? And that people need to be jolted out of their false consciousness through a kind of Brechtian alienation techniques and things like this. They need to be made to feel slightly uncomfortable and so on, so they cannot go back to their kind of evil bourgeois lives or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. And I think this is very, very, very effective. In my mind, is there any difference between the agitprop of this era and any Netflix show which is trying to advocate for a specific position? That they'll create these like little scenes and rational arguments to say this is why we need to, look after this person, human rights, etc., etc. All with an aim of ending the innocence of people and giving them experience about evil things.
Yes, I would also just recommend people go and watch Black Pill's old movie reviews where he basically shows how even some pretty good Hollywood films from 70s, 80s, 90s were little more than glorified agitprop, essentially. Seeding basically today's ideology.
Yeah, it's very dark. It's very, very dark stuff when you think about it and actually like do some analysis. But that's the power of it, because it's it's packaged in a way that's entertaining. Or again, like, I mean, I got this image because it was just like an absolute meme. I mean, look at these guys here, in the jumpsuits or whatever. But I think it would have been something that would have made sense to the local population.
See this guy down here. He's a kind of CNN news anchor caught doing sexual deviancy, kind of waiting to happen. But
there's also, conversely, as opposed to losing experience, the creation of experience. Once you've experienced something, again, you can't go back from it. And I think World War I is an interesting time where, again, part of its success as a moment of subversion is that people got to try things they didn't get to try before. They wouldn't have been able to try before in their lives. And again, once you let that happen, I think it's exceedingly hard to like put the bottle back on the genie again. Obviously, this isn't to do with words, but in my mind, it's an interesting example of that during World War I they had to get women policemen to help out due to the lack of numbers, and then lo and behold, in the interwar period, they bring in women full time after that, basically. Like, who are the women that are doing that? It's the people that got the experience previously. That the feeling of power that comes from truncheoning a chud to the head, basically.
I don't want to make too much of a tangent of this, Pharaoh, but did you watch any of the Remembrance Sunday yesterday?
No, I didn't. Sorry.
They have all the different troops kind of marching after the bit, the cenotaph. All of the different people come through, and they had these various women's divisions that came through, and I had never realized or noticed before that moment that women cannot march. It's something to do with their, but obviously marching was developed for men, right? Something to do with female body shape means that it looks ridiculous when women are, you've seen this woman who's shaped like a pear, and she's kind of trying to do the march, and I don't know, she looked like a group of penguins or something. It just didn't work. It just doesn't work. And I've never even noticed that before. Carry on.
Yeah, I don't know if I've seen it myself, but I'll have to look out next time I see any marching. I'll rate it. Okay. Conversely to the having of experience, there's the censoring of experience as well, and of course, I've censored out the mustache man here, with a giant mustache. But you always going about they always show his speeches, but they never show the words, and I think that's a really interesting thing. It's like there's never a rational debate about things. It's always a play on the passions. It's that guttural thing. It's never, here's my argument. Actually, these are the reasons why I have this position. I'm not, by the way, I'm not advocating for him, but just saying this is what happened.
I mean, I'll just say the inverse of that, I guess, is that I follow a few quite edgy accounts on Twitter. I think maybe they've been banned by Elon Musk, ironically, but I don't know. I follow a few of these guys, and every once in a while, you'll see they've packaged together some old speech of the Mustache Man's and put it with epic music behind it and stuff. And it is scarily effective how you kind of watch them at your own risk, I suppose, because you can kind of feel yourself get kind of carried away by it, because it's getting beneath the mind, as Bowden used to say, right? So there is, in much the same way as we were saying, the kind of magical power of the word or whatever. You are kind of playing with fire when it comes to these things, I would say.
100%. It's a dangerous and powerful thing. I think partly why the kind of the 2016 memes for Trump thing worked, because again it taps into that guttural level, you will not win these things through rational discussion or presenting arguments. You will appeal to people. You will move people by firing up the passions through words, poetry, and music. Okay, let's keep on going. And then we obviously swell the passions with these kind of like very powerful imagery and words at the same time. Okay, let's just plow through to the next section. So this is the kind of the main bulk of what I wanted to talk about today. Actually, was the this age of the commie capital press, where between 40, what I would say 46 and 90.
Sorry, I'm just something tickled me about your phrase, commie capital, because it's very. I'll just say, Pharaoh, you very cleverly cut off a kind of certain dialectical strategy that may have been used by, the great debate of the 20th century was communism versus capitalism, and you've basically just like headed it off at the pass and put them together.
Very certainly in terms of what they want, they want the same things. They want efficiency. That's I think a fundamental understanding. During this time, do not underestimate the power of the press. You've got obviously newspapers, but also magazines, all used to basically sell products. And I think during this time, copy and the word was at its strongest. I think we're in a much more visual age. Obviously we're on YouTube right now. You've got the kind of the TV, but during that period, the word was king. Now, I believe they developed, your Madison Avenues types developed much more advanced strategies for using words, and I've kind of plugged it into these three rough groups that I've called associative, short circuit, and dog whistles. And again, each one of these appeals to a different part of that kind of soul level, and has different like purposes. So, for example, the associative, unsurprisingly, is about associating one word with something else. If you scroll down, I've got my kind of like rough examples here. So we want to potentially associate one word with a negative thing, for example. And so what we could do is set up an advert where we're saying, actually, this kind of behavior is bad. The loose lips talk sink ships is a great example of that for war propaganda. Don't talk about military movements. So through advertising, we can build up these negative connotations, which then changes how we act or moves us in a different way. Conversely, we can build up positive connotations. We can tie words to other positive words. We can also either create or change behavior. So, for example, a breakfast cereal is a perfect example of how 100 years ago, no one had breakfast cereal whatsoever. And we have all been propagandized into eating breakfast cereal by breakfast manufacturers, by fundamentally changing our passions and our behavior, by short-circuiting our brains, and whenever we think about breakfast, we think of breakfast cereal. Even the name breakfast cereal is clever because it ties cereal together with breakfast, as opposed to what it is, which is cow food. Tying images to words is slightly more complicated, but again, you can imagine like a cool image, and then tie that to a specific word or a specific brand. Oh yeah, even the concept of a brand itself was kind of developed during this time. I would say in a meaningful way, where a company would have a suite of these associations together. What is Coca-Cola? Well, it is the color red. It's the kind of cursive writing. It's a cool, refreshing drink. It's something I have at lunchtime. A brand identity is all of these associations mapped out together. It can also be tied into a specific moment. So for example, I often talk about this. The KFC Christmas chicken thing in Japan. They propagandized an entire nation eating American chicken in a religious festival that like is a small minority in their country. That again in my mind just shows the power of words to be able to do that. And then also importance as well. How do we prioritize our lives and what we do? Well, we can shift that importance through words. Now, if you I don't know if you want to say anything before we show some images here.
No. Let's carry on. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you want to bring up one of the files? So there should be no. So if you stay on here and then switch across to the Google Drive, I've got a couple of examples of each of these that I thought we could look at.
So I open the associate folder.
Yeah, and then I've labelled each one, but I can read them out as well.
Hold on. See that?
Yes. So this is the first example. This is a behavioural one. So what we've got here is a men's hair care brand. It's setting you up with a couple of copy lines here. You know, the 60s was the wild look, the 70s was the let it be look, and now it's saying the 80s is the neat look. So it's interesting. It's trying to change behavior by saying this is what it is. Now, obviously, I would say in the past, hairstyles were the outcome of like elite choices. Essentially, if you go to medieval times, the elites do something, and then eventually it filters down through the lesser classes, etc., and then like the bourgeoisie try and ape the elites, and then the lower bourgeoisie try and ape them, and then the peasants just do what they're told.
Do you know my absolute favourite example of that, Pharaoh? Right?
Yeah, go on.
James I, also James VI of Scotland, but James I of England, wrote this book where he was like basically laying out what his ideal king should be, and there's a whole set of advices to his son in there.
Okay.
And he's like, make sure your nails are short and keep your hair short, right? Keep your hair short. If you look at Charles I, Charles II, James II, they all got that long,
long curly
hair.
Yes, yeah.
And that literally came from the rebellion of Charles I against James I. So I just find it really funny.
That's great.
Yeah, carry on.
But that's a good example because, again, if you look at the court of Charles I, everyone's wearing long hair at that point. Now, what's interesting in our age, where in our nation, where capital is king, or certainly was during the 80s, it's not an elite that tells you what to do. It's whatever, a brand or an oligarch trying to sell you something is telling you what to do. All competing, all trying to create pockets of fashion, for example. So I think this is an interesting idea where we're trying to like auto-generate behavior. Here's a question for you: if we can change the hairstyle of a nation, what else can we do through words? Do you want to go on to the next one?
Yeah.
This is the classic like meme product, the diamond ring, which was literally memed into existence through advertising
by the De Beers company, right?
Yeah, exactly. So again, it's artificially increased in price, but I think one of the I've put this down as an importance. I don't know if for those who've got engaged, do you know how much you should spend on your engagement ring?
Actually, it was 3 months' salary.
Well, this is it. It was supposedly 2 months' salary, but who made up that idea? Well, it's obviously the De Beers company advertising that having a diamond ring is really expensive, and you should spend that much salary on a ring. While in reality and historically, that again just wasn't the case. So again, we're being propagandized into placing importance on things that were historically meaningless. Did you spend? This is a big question. Did you spend 3 months' salary on your engagement ring?
Bloody yeah, twice. And the second time was a bloody expensive ring, I can tell you. And not only is that ring insured, but it's so, how can I say, it was so expensive that she doesn't really wear it out or anything. She's scared to take it out because it's too.
That's so funny.
So ironic, but yeah,
that's a flex on everyone in chat right there. My wife's engagement ring is really too expensive.
Not really, but I don't know. Yeah, I did the meme. What a sucker, eh? Sucker born everybody.
Well, again, it's like I think it's whatever makes you happy. But the question is like, why do we think like that? And has this always been the case, basically? Okay, what's the next one? Oh, I love this one. This is you don't have to be Jewish to love Levy's Real Jewish Rye. So again, I put this down as positive and negative. You know, this is saying, you know, look at this delicious Jewish rye bread and this lovely lady here rubbing her hands. That she's so happy that you're going to have her pastrami sandwich. And again, trying to build up those kind of connotations at the same time there. Okay.
I hesitate to say this, Lara, but is she rubbing her hands?
No comment.
Anyway. This is another one. Yeah.
Yeah, this is like a car advert where this is tying in images together. So you see the image of a rhino. I don't know if you can zoom in on the text on the top left hand side. There you go. So it's more than technology; it's instinct. So it's this idea. Actually, a car is more than just like a machine itself. It almost acts like an animal, and this animal is a fearsome rhino at the same time. So it's an interesting how again that they're kind of building up this complicated image of what a car is. A car is more than just this utilitarian thing which takes you from A to B. It is this. It's an experience. It is a living animal. So yeah, interesting.
Okay. Hold on. Yep. Another famous one, Vera.
Yes, well, Coke's really interesting because I think they're the masters of, again, changing behaviour. So this is a really interesting moment. You can't actually see the small text, but this is Coca-Cola. It's an ad from the 50s. You see a housewife. She's just done the hoovering. You can see the hoover next to her. She's still got her pinny on. And look, it's the pause that refreshes at home. So again, we're using words to generate behavior at the same time. So whenever you have a rest or a break from your housework, so again, they're obviously appealing to housewives. They're trying to get someone to have a Coke. So it's a clever way of creating patterns of behaviors that weren't there beforehand. If you think about, this is a really interesting way. So again, if this can work for getting people to drink Cokes, this can work for getting people to lock down during COVID.
Yeah, and you see, they interestingly with Coke, they didn't change their ways because I'm old enough to remember. Do you remember Diet Coke break? Diet Coke break. Do you remember that?
Right. No.
Where all of the ladies who were working in marketing for Corporation X, right, on their Diet Coke break, they'd all go outside and have a Diet Coke and basically perv on like a workman who was, like a construction worker who was all rippled and muscled up. And that was the Diet Coke break. They'd all basically use their break at work to, get a bit of eye candy and drink a Diet Coke. So
yeah, that's interesting. It's kind of like an updating of this moment, isn't it, for the modern working woman? And again, it's like it's an attack on that water cooler moment. So everyone are getting going to the water cooler and saying, "Look, why don't you go outside and have a Diet Coke instead?" So it's interesting. They've been onto it for a long time.
Does the water cooler moment actually exist though? Like
in America, it does.
Meme, but does it actually? People actually gather and talk around the cooler.
I mean, I would say that it's definitely like disappeared, but it was a definite thing in like the 70s and 80s. If you think about, like all of the what do they call them, like the pod rooms? Like an office space where they're all living in the little working the pods. You do have those water cooler discussions because you don't get to socialize. I think it's different now with the open plan style of modern offices that we live in, where you can have more casual conversations. Like before, it was kind of funneled into only the water cooler, and it's a very American thing, I think.
Say, Jim, do you see the game last night?
Exactly.
All right, okay.
You could definitely infiltrate America there, AA, if you need to.
I could, yeah. Well, with a terrible accent, so to learn all the lingo. Okay, Tide. What women want.
Again, this is all about. If you can scroll in for this, actually, it's all about the copy and text. So you've got the kind of the the tagline at the top, Tide's got what women want, or what do women want? Well, it does all three: the world's cleanest wash, the world's whitest wash, and actively brightens colours. So you can see each of those words highlighted there. So
I just saw Years just did a little kind of orgasmic, the world's whitest. Her ears pricked up. She was like, yes. I'll carry on.
But copy's interesting here because it draws you in with the tagline, and then you start to read some of the blocks. Each of the text blocks is meant to convince you, but again, what stays with you is the just look at this with the red, like what's red writing here. You can see at the top, clean as tide, cleanest, whitest, brightens, tide. So in your mind, subconsciously, you're taking in and making those associations at the same time. So it's a clever way of building that up.
Can I just ask, that kind of feminist poster with the woman doing the kind of flexed muscle? Isn't that her? Isn't that the same? Looks like
Maybe.
the same woman.
I don't think so. Rosie the Riveter, are you thinking of?
I don't know. I don't know. It's a woman who looks a bit like this, but she's doing that kind of flexed muscle. And
I think she's more
a bit
swell.
of what's her name? Sorry,
Rosie the Riveter. I think
Rosie the Riveter. Right. Okay. Here we go. Back to the Chad 80s. No, this is 70s. By the looks of it.
Yeah. So again, this is really interesting. Where again, I think Coke was trying to tap into an existing moment. So they probably looked at a housewife and said, "What does her day look like? Look, when she's making tea making food for the children and hoovering up the house, she doesn't have time to drink a Coke, but there is a time slot during those breaks. So let's advertise for those times. Now, if you can't tap into a time slot, why not create your own? So this idea of champagne, which looks like some kind of terrible portmanteau of champagne and ale, desperately trying to create what they're saying is a moment. So again, it's obviously targeted at romantic couples, people that are looking at going on a date together, and actually you can have this romantic moment through the power of champagne. And again, you've got positive connotations there, the ultimate experience. Can we zoom in on the text here a second and read out some of the at the bottom here? Yeah. When the time is right and the mood is light, go with your feeling. Experience champagne, malt liquor, sparkling, extra dry or pink. Champagne tastes like a light bubbly wine. Champagne quality without the champagne price. Tonight, let's get let the good feelings come. Celebrate life. Share champagne together. So again, very much targeted at generating that kind of date moment.
What an awful product this is, by the way, champagne. Oh my god. Also, a few elements.
Would you share a moment?
No, I wouldn't. No, I wouldn't buy champagne. I just hate the idea of it. But there's one thing I like about this, right? Which is that okay, there's you. If you're black, you can enjoy it too. But you get to hang out in the background because it's 1979 and you're not yet stuck front and center. You are part of the American picture, but you're there deservedly in the background.
The best thing is how they've got him holding the glass. So everyone look at the people on the left, like refinedly holding the stem. Like you're not meant for a cold drink. You're not meant to hold it and then just look. Like, can we zoom in on the hand a second? He's just absolutely clenched the champagne glass on the right hand side.
Yeah, there he is. Look at that. It's almost like a kind of simian grip on that, as opposed to this refined grip here. Okay, let's carry on.
I quite like this tagline. Who is he? So again, generating mystery. I think this is again like tying an image to a brand. So often when looking at copy on an advert, especially these magazines, you got to think they're sort of like two levels of interface. There is the kind of far away, just imagine you're going through a magazine pages and you're just going to see like a couple of words. What are the words that jump out? It's the who is he and the Kent. at the bottom. So again, you're building up that association. But again, this is it's a captivating image. You know, everyone's having their kind of suave boat party, but there's this like hipster guy smoking a Kent cigarette on the marina by himself. You know, how intriguing.
What I'm interested in here, Pharaoh, is the slight cucking that's going on with look, this guy is getting cucked, and this guy up here, look, they're all three of these women are looking at him, despite the fact that two of them are partners already. That is.
But again, that's the cleverness of it. It's kind of like you will be cucked unless you smoke Kent. Is the like implicit meaning behind it.
There you go, Red Hawk. Get yourself a pack of Kent, son.
Who is he? Can we zoom in on the text? I'll have a look and see what they say. There you go. He's a man with taste for good things. Cruising. This could be BAP. Cruising the warm Caribbean waters, stimulating friends aboard, dropping anchor at an exciting port. It's no coincidence his cigarette is Kent. Kent selects 27 of the world's finest tobaccos and blends them for flavor and character to satisfy the most demanding tastes. Kent, the most famous micronite filter. There we go.
People should send this to BAP. You know, cigarettes are actually.
Who is he? Who is he?
All right, let's carry on. Funky is disco.
So this was like a 70s clothing brand, and obviously just like unashamedly tapping into the disco phenomenon. You know, like obviously producing certain clothes. I mean, this is the brute force approach. You know, funky is disco, trying to build up that direct association at the same time. You've obviously got these kind of it's a combination of like model shots plus also here's the lifestyle of, you know, you can be happy in the disco. I mean, I personally find these. Can we zoom in on the model faces here? I think this is like nightmarish. So much fun. I'm having so much fun right now.
Funky is disco, right?
But we should do this for just brute force associations. I don't know. Well, you have to come up with something.
Funky is disco. It sounds like something from one of AAA's books, to be honest.
Exactly.
Strange.
It's literally just so low level. This is very low level advertising.
Okay, let's carry on. There's another dude, a Budweiser guy.
Yeah, this is a kind of like a moment thing, because I think they're trying to like recreate like a bar or like a members club or something. So this is obviously a like a waiter, and again, where there's life, there's Bud, and I think that's a really good tagline. So again, if you want to be the life of the party, you know, you want to drink a Budweiser. I think even the idea of shortening the name to Bud is quite clever, because obviously you got the visor, which is a bit like Germanic, a bit foreign. If we turn it to Bud, you've got the kind of connotations with, you know, like he's my buddy. It sounds much more American at the same time. And then do you want to just zoom in on the text here? On the barrel too, sure. On every label, on bottles, cans, and kegs of draft, Budweiser proudly shows the ingredients that makes it taste so good. So again, it's all about emphasizing the kind of quality of product through what they're selling. But yeah, this is trying to convince you at that moment of of getting a drink at the members club. You know, you're having a pint of Bud.
I think it works.
No, so it's a weirdly feminine glass as well. I wondered if they're trying to appeal to like a womanly audience. I don't know. Americans can tell me. Would you ever have a pint in that glass?
There's something about this fella that's not making me think, oh, I want to be like him. I'm like this dude.
Who is he?
All right, let's carry on. It's because he's the barman, right? It's because he's the barman.
Exactly. Like that's what I'm saying. This isn't about like you want to be the person associated with it. It's more like when you're at this next behavioral place, when you're at the bar, when you see a guy with a tie, think Budweiser. Basically, a lot of what we call in the industry FMCG products, these fast-moving consumer goods, small price point items. It's all about recall and remembrance, as you'll find out if you purchase Foundations of Entrepreneurship. And so basically, it's all about being the brand that people think about when you're down the aisle or out at the pub, basically.
We'll carry on. I'm not a massive fan of American beer, I have to say.
No.
Okay. Cointreau. Cointreau.
Yeah,
for some reason I've never seen that spelt.
Yeah,
yeah.
I really like this one. This is obviously the orange like liqueur spirit. So it's often used as a mixer, or you'd have it like, I don't know, with a spritz or something like that. But I quite like it as a drink. So you've obviously got the kind of seductive nature of the image already, just the kind of legs popping out the bath. But again, just the tagline's really strong here. Cointreau, the tasteful indulgence. So again, this idea that actually, I think this is done in the 80s. You've got a lot of this kind of nouveau riche gaudiness. Cointreau is like a legacy brand. It's been around for ages, and it's a sign that I guess it's kind of like the Lambrini girl. Think about that of the 90s. The this kind of like low quality wannabe champagne brand.
This also reminds me of a Gallet. I think there was Flake. It was the Flake advert which had this
Flake
woman
advert.
in the bath. They loved this in the 80s. This idea of the woman in the bath consuming something. They loved that.
That's true, actually. Yeah, I didn't even think about what's the percentage of 80s woman in bath adverts for the thing is it is a moment of this again. There's that cleverness where it's like the indulgence is the drink itself, but also the fact you're having a drink in a hot bath is nice. Having a drink with candles all around you, so that it's the double play.
I'm pretty sure that that one I referenced with the Tony Blair. Why have cotton when you can have silk?
Yes, yeah.
That was a Galaxy. I'm pretty sure she was in the bath as well. It was kind of like
everyone.
Yeah, they loved it. Okay, let's carry on.
No, it's interesting because again, like they probably did some analysis in terms of like what's the people's day, and again, it's trying to create a behavioural association with when you're treating yourself and having a bath, have a Cointreau. Do you see what I'm saying? It's about attaching the brand to that moment. And again, sorry to keep emphasising this, like you can use this for anything. You can when you're on public transport, wear a mask. It's the same thing. Associating an item or a brand with a specific particular moment at the same time. When you think of Tony Blair, think of the Dark Lord. That's your association.
Yeah, I mean, there are some really hard ones, like Jimmy Savile. Immediately, people associate that with something.
Yeah,
and it's not as. Once upon a time, it would have been a cigar and going.
Yeah, exactly. But that's it. That again,
something else. Yeah.
There is something where these narratives or mythologies or whatever you want to call them need to be maintained, and they can be attacked as well as we've seen. But some of them I think are easier to push. Something like getting someone to drink a Coke during their refreshment break. It's a pretty low value. It's low value and it's like low power. Getting someone to change their to stay indoors, for example, was really hard for people. I think, and I think they found it too that they could only do it. For example, with the lockdowns, there is a limit to propaganda. You cannot fully control someone, I think, just purely from propaganda and fear. But depending on the action, it's easier to do than others, if that makes sense.
Every once in a while you'll still see someone wearing a mask, like out and about, in
I do. Just instant. It's like a twat notification alert, isn't it? Let's be honest here.
Every time I see someone, especially if it's a man, I just get a welling of just disgust and contempt that wells up in me for that person.
It definitely, yeah.
It's almost uncontrollable now.
We should be throwing eggs at those people. Basically, I feel like that. Publicly shame them.
I get almost like a physical revulsion. I kind of give women a pass due to their inherent weakness, but when it's a man,
then it's worse. It's usually like desperate. They're like probably married to some kind of sage doctor or something like that, just desperate for women's approval to do it.
Yeah. Okay. I must have an Oreo sandwich for dessert. Oh, amazing. The
This
National
was like
Biscuit Company.
this was an earlier one. I mean, again, this is the brute force where again, yeah, like you know, I mean, has anyone ever had like a single Oreo sandwich for dessert? Also, I refuse to call Oreos Oreos. I will now call them Oreo sandwich. Like, that's
Oreo
a great.
sandwich, I see. Oh, that's the whole name of the biscuit, an Oreo sandwich, is it?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I think it is because it's like it is an actual sandwich. So I think the original name was Oreo sandwich. But again, this is like you know, whenever you think of a dessert, why not have an Oreo? But I just love the idea of like she just be giving one a single feeble Oreo.
So, such is my misogyny at the moment, Pharaoh. I immediately imagine this woman as a bit irritating, probably a bit of a nag. You know, always calling up her husband and making like petty demands, like I must have an Oreo
He's
sandwich.
literally yes. So like yeah. Sorry, I lost my I lost my train of thought there a second. Sorry.
Yeah, so let's carry on.
Again, this is an interesting like like early Maybelline advert about the importance of eyes, and again, you know, obviously different cultures value different like parts of like the of the woman. Let's just say, aren't like the Iranians obsessed with hair? Is that not right? Am I just imagining it? Is that just stereotypical? What does the Iranian think is the most important part of the woman's face and head? Let's just say.
I don't know. They're just self-obsessed in general, obviously.
I guess what's interesting is that again, like different age. Okay, you know how like the Elizabethans loved the forehead, for example.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So you can prioritize different bits. And again, yeah, this is an attempt to to do that basically. So again, you can not only can you change behavior, but you can also kind of shift importance levels as well, and say actually take priority over this.
CompUse. We've seen this advert before. You love this advert. I've seen it several times.
No. Okay. Okay, fine. We'll skip on. We'll skip on if you've seen this one. We've got loads left. So,
let's eat out.
Again, this is quite clever because this is this is an old school McDonald's advert. I threw this in especially for you here, and you've got the kind of the family in the car, and again, it's this idea of, you know, poorer families who wouldn't go to restaurants, would just cook at home. And why don't we machinate and create this idea of the takeaway, or like going out together as a family to eat? You saw The Founder, haven't you? Yes.
I still haven't seen it. No, everybody tells me to, but
yeah. Like one of the observations that the evil guy, I can't remember his name.
Ray Kroc.
Yeah, Kroc had was that lots of families went there and they all went together to wait in the queue to get the burgers because they were cheap and fast, and because otherwise it was all like drive-throughs and they were kind of had like a bad reputation, so lots of like younger kids were doing them. So again, it's about trying to create like a family moment together. Why don't we all go out and have fun? And again, rich families would do that at a restaurant, maybe not with the kids. So this is again about changing behavior itself and creating like generating a new moment. Again, this is where I think people go wrong with understanding about business and products. A lot of people say that, you know, companies are reactive to markets, and they are, but they can also generate new markets and moments themselves. You know, these guys are generating an entirely new market through changing the behavior of people through advertising. So it's a different way of thinking about it. You know, they're generating their own demand, if that makes sense. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. It just depends on the age and the amount of advertising you're doing. But people forget about that.
Hugely successful McDonald's were with this particular.
Yeah,
have been in creating this, basically, in creating the whole idea of a family going to McDonald's.
I mean, this changed the world. I would say, like, again, just think about how many cultures have takeaways or take out food or go out and eat together as a family. I think that's like a total change to behavior patterns of the world through advertising.
There's a guy in chat saying, I guess this shows it's a crapshoot at who succeeds. McDonald's ads were always crap. I actually disagree. I think there's a reason that it was McDonald's, and McDonald's in particular. I think that they, I mean, maybe not this ad in particular, but they're good at extremely simple. One of the things I've noticed, speaking about the word Pharaoh, is that the Tories especially have gone very hard on this, is the 3-word slogan.
Yeah.
That is repeated over and over again. Get Brexit done. Build back better. It's very they're very big on the 3-word slogan at the moment. That is repeated over and over and over again. And I think McDonald's have often had a 3. I'm loving it, or
that's true.
Eat out, or whatever.
It is. I think you're right. It is effective. And again, I think we often talk about Tories being the most effective, like hangers on to power. I think their thinking about this, like propagandizing to the nation, is way stronger than Labour has ever been. Like, can you think of a Labour slogan similar to that with 3 words?
No, well, you see, I mean, everybody's kind of almost missed this because they're in our spheres, everybody's a bit stuck in the weeds. But the talk, like especially under Boris Johnson, they basically just bypassed the whole like Westminster bubble over it. Like they didn't turn up to debates. He didn't do the Andrew Neil interview. They, I mean, Rishi Sunak basically did no interviews before he became Prime Minister.
Yeah.
And it's just, we can bypass all of that with this 3-word slogan,
Yeah. Well,
and whatever it is, it's bizarre.
I think they've realised just how susceptible people are nowadays, and like I said, I think it's different. I think we're much less rational. Our minds are much less strong to fight off propaganda, partly because of this advertising age. We've lived through so much of it, and the techniques have become so powerful. Again, just copy what McDonald's do, but instead of saying, let's eat out. In fact, hold on a second. You're clear them out. That's a 3-word slogan.
Clear them out. Yeah. Well, I mean, I instinctively understood this, and I thought, well, you can, power must coordinate.
Power must coordinate. That I love that.
Clear them out.
Yeah, that's a great phrase.
You just short circuit with these built-in, ready-made theses.
Yeah,
people can just repeat, and it can, destroy the theory cell. That's what I want to do, Pharaoh. Destroy the short circuit and destroy the theory cell.
It is the victory of the passions over reason. I think that's what you're describing. The theory cell is stuck in reason alone when you need to appeal to that the baser man fundamentally.
Yeah, and I tell you who were actually very good at this sort of thing was the original. Like what I call these days, alt-right 1.0. Demographics is destiny.
Yes, you're right.
They just cut through everything with that kind of mimetic power of the 3-word slogan. Yeah. So, my current favorite one, Pharaoh, civilization is incommunicable.
Yeah, again, this is great. You're very good at coining a phrase. Let's be honest. So,
although that was Gorbanu. And clear them out was Bowden, but I pick them out and help sloganize them.
You curate them, promote them. That's it.
Exactly.
But this is again, just like seriously, this is how we need to be thinking. It is like, again, we can use this for good or we can use it for evil, and I'm very paternalistic in that kind of way, where it's like if our enemies are controlling the minds of people, we should do the same, but for good.
Do you know who else was good at this? Donald Trump.
Yes.
Lock her up. Build the wall. Lock her up.
Or again, the positive associations through nicknames, or sorry, the negative associations. So again, he was a very good polemic in terms of attaching keywords. Was it lazy Jeb? Ron DeSantimonious.
Low energy Jeb.
Jeb.
Lying Ted Cruz.
Yeah. It's just so powerful, and again, I think that stuff really cuts through, especially like to the masses again, or to people who are easily propagandized.
Drain the swamp. Yeah.
Shame.
Amazing.
Yeah, again, great at the propaganda, terrible at the execution. But again, this is all should be learnings. This is all like
learnings. Yes, indeed.
Yeah, sorry to use my corporate speak there. They are snuck in.
You need to be like Trump in the campaign, but then when you're in power, you need to be
Blair.
Like, Blair in power. Yeah, but also Blair in the campaign. Blair, as I've said so many times, was a basic kind of all rounder. 15 categories. Yeah.
What's his best phrase? What's his best phrase though?
Education, education, education.
Okay, that's good.
But
then it's like tough on crime, tough on the cause. It's like that's
tough on crime, tough on the causes of crime. Not quite as quite as punchy as some of his others. Things can only get better.
Yeah, I think Trump is stronger than him in terms of like that mimetic word power, but like by 1 point or something like that. I think.
I do think that there's a. How can I put it? But Blair's whole thing was being the slickest operation, campaign discipline, stuff like that. Maybe in terms of pure sloganizing. I mean, in a way, he was playing a different game as well back then, as well, though.
Yeah, it is a different age. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, let's carry on.
This was randomly tying things to specific times or locations. So this is the idea of the Easter gift. Have you? This is I quite like seeing these because this is like failed attempts at changing behaviour.
Sorry to go back to Blair. Somebody has reminded me though. What about when he hammered John Major? Weak.
Yeah.
And do you know what? Do you know why that was such genius? Because it was a quotation of Thatcher against, I think, Michael Foot.
Nice.
Weak. So it was actually turning a Tory slogan back on them. So very clever.
That's clever. I mean, it's interesting. He doesn't use like complicated word games. It's just the alliteration to drive the message home.
Yeah, and sorry to go on this Dark Lord tangent, but I caught like literally like 30 seconds, like a minute of "I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here," and Matt Hancock, the former health secretary.
It's tragic, truly tragic.
Well, he was in there. And in fact, Mrs. A has been watching it because she loves watching trash like that, as all women do. And she said, like, he has got amazing charisma, Matt Hancock. Like, you wouldn't think it. He's won everybody around. He's kind of he's like he is literally like worm tonguing his way around the camp, and he's like somehow got like he's been sympathetic and he's apologized and all this sort of stuff, and it's like he's won the house around and he's winning the audience back, which is just so tragic because he's obviously gone on there to rehabilitate his public image.
Yeah, exactly. This is a classic PR. This is a classic PR move.
But anyways, sorry, Ferry. Listen, in the minute that I caught it, Matt Hancock was telling a Tony Blair story, and he was talking about what does a politician do if they get a difficult question? And he said, well, what Tony Blair used to do is he used to use the word look. He'd look, and then he'd pause. He'd be like, look, I come here today to tell you about my plans. And then he'd go into whatever he wanted to talk about and completely ignore the question. And he was, Hancock was talking in gushing praise of the Dark Lord's techniques there. So, yeah.
Interesting. I'll be interested to see if he can fully rehabilitate himself back to society. I don't know. I feel like it's going to be tough. It's a tough comeback, basically. Maybe in a different party. Maybe he'll go Lib Dem or something.
All right. So this one, the Easter gift. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this is interesting because again, this is an attempt to create. Like, have you ever heard of an Easter gift before? Like, have you? Like, I've received like chocolate eggs before, right?
Mhm.
But I've never received like a gift of perfume on
No.
at Easter time. So this is like a blatant attempt to try and force through and like generate this moment and generate this pattern of behavior. Do you want to zoom in on the Easter gift? This is obviously for some kind of, I think this is Edwardian, so this is probably like Dirty Bertie buying some expensive perfume for his like actress mistress or something like that's what it looks like.
She's a bit of a Playboy bunny, I notice as well.
Yeah, exactly. Anime lover. Right, the Easter gift. Can we zoom in on the text here again? Yeah, the age-old custom of remembrances of friends at Easter still holds, and what more delightful way of expressing it than an opportunity, an opportune gift of 4711 eau de cologne. Its refreshing fragrance and old world perfume are beautifully in keeping with this season of year. So there you go. I mean, I didn't know that Easter was a big time of remembrance of friends, but an interesting failure, I think.
Very interesting. I think the chocolate companies wrapped up Easter for.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah. Okay, this is I sort of love this one. Yeah, what kind of man owns his own computer? So this is kind of like an early Apple ad. I think trying to kind of create positivity, and you've got obviously Benjamin Franklin just chilling in his house, smashing the word processor while his kite sits next to him. I'm sure that ship has some kind of Benjamin Franklin meaning as well. But do you want to let's zoom in on some of the text here. Yeah, I mean, some of this copy is great. Rather revolutionary, the whole idea of owning your own computer. Not if you're a diplomat, printer, scientist, and inventor, or a kite designer too. Today, there's Apple Computer. It's designed to be a personal computer. I think, yeah, even the concept of the personal computer, I think that's a great bit of propaganda. As opposed to, because again, like concepts of the computer being, part of a big data center, part of a big corporation, etc. This computer is for you. To uncomplicate your life and to make you more effective. It's a wise man who owns an Apple. Again, notice how they've got these kind of like highlighted text, which are like the headers, which you can kind of skim through, and then the block of text, which kind of like this is the passion stuff occurs in the text. That single zinger or the headline. It's the appeal to reason that happens in the text here. If your time means money, Apple can help make more of it. In an age of specialists, the most successful specialist stays away from uncertain drudgery. That's where Apple comes in. Apple's a real computer right to the core. I won't continue the rest, but I think that this is a quality bit of copy.
I like that pun. Apple is a real computer.
I know, it's great. No, really good. Really good. And best of all, I mean, just look at the guy, computer shop guy in the center here. Smug computer man. I know what you're here for. It's an Apple computer. Really good. This is probably my favorite so far.
So there we are. Pharaoh, there's 10 minutes. What do you want to do?
Let's just pat that. The other ones aren't as big as this. The other two sections. If you just boot up the next set of ads, I'll just quickly talk through. The second usage is around kind of what I call short-circuiting. There are certain words which will like mess up your brain and make you think again and just stop and almost like try and reboot mentally, and that's usually done through either a combination of juxtaposition or surprise, shock, or anger. Now, obviously, like the bombardment of these charity ads, I do genuinely wonder, AA, if there is a secondary impact of these. So, think about Live Aid in the 80s or whatever. I wonder if all of these charity ads have had a strong part in dissolving ideas of ethnos in different nations. Here we go. He's starving. We're not. It's a shocking figure. It's a poor, starving child, obviously terrible. But what it's saying is that someone on the other side of the world has as much is as important as your own child here, effectively. Which, from a moral perspective, I would say is obviously not. Family is the most important. The reason why that my family's not starving and his is obviously due to circumstance, but also because I look after my family first and my nation second, and then anyone else if there's anything left. But this is again short-circuiting that. That's saying that this guy, this small child, is as important as your countrymen. Which I think, from a moral perspective, is not true. I genuinely wonder, how long have these adverts been going for, and how prevalent are they, and how long? I think this is really important in dissolving fundamental ideas about who we are. But it's a shocking advert.
Universalist morality, essentially.
Yeah, exactly. But it's relying on shock here, but the problem with shock, you mentioned about words losing their value. Shock loses its value. This probably does nothing to anyone watching this now, unless I'm seeing like an emaciated child whose face has been gnawed off by a rat. Something like horrific. I won't be moved anymore. I mean, that is the sad. This is the problem with an experience. Once you've built up a certain level of experience, it doesn't have the same kick anymore, does it?
The law of diminishing returns, as a economist used to say. Yes.
Yeah. There we go. Yeah, you have to experience even harder times. Okay. Do you want to do another one? This is like again a shock value. So read the text. Admit it. You've always been crazy about topless models. You expect to see a beautiful, buxom lady, but in fact you're presented with a small Jeep instead. So again, it's that classic turning things on its head. Should we do one more from here and then look at the others, the other set? Oh, I sort of love this one. Animals
are not clowns.
I'm not clowns. This is a sad monkey, and this is like an appeal to like animal cruelty in the animal circus. I'll put all of these on my on my Twitter feed so people can look at them in detail. But this was again a shock value, trying to like your brain's looking at the image and the text and trying to understand the what's going on. Okay, the last section is the dog whistle. This is all about like euphemisms, allegiances, and enemies. We'll do two of them maybe from here quickly. The best ones are the Budweiser adverts.
I got it up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Here we go. Yeah.
Yeah, and this is again about like showing your allegiance to a certain group, saying that we're one of you or we stand for you. And again, it's very interesting. This is in the 50s. Budweiser advocating for specifically targeting African American men at again a specific moment. This moment calls for a Budweiser, and again, in my mind, it's interesting. This is pre civil rights stuff as well. That they're specifically targeting and appealing in an attempt to grow their market base. They're like, oh look, there's an entire market that we haven't tapped into. Look, we can target them. No one else is doing it.
It's funny. Millennial Woes recently ran a poll on Telegram. See if I can find that a second, because it kind of tickled me. The poll was, what was your favorite version of the American black guy? Let me just tell you the options we had. 1950s respectable, right? Which is these guys here. Yeah. 1960s respectable but calling for change. That's Martin Luther King. 1970s afros, marijuana, and voodoo. 1980s ghetto blaster, rapping from the hood, but friendly and helpful. That's like Eddie Murphy, basically, or I don't know, pick your own favorite 80s friendly guy from the hood. Early 1990s, wise cracking, incredible dancers, and MC Hammer. Late 1990s, quietly murderous. 2000s, murderous. 2010s, murderous. 2020s, murderous and anti-Semitic. I just thought it was funny, that's all. So anyway, let's carry on.
Okay, let's do. Can you? Oh, this is horrific. This one's Do the One Piece. That one's horrific. Yeah, because innocence is sexier than you think. I mean, that's just an awful advert. I put it in brackets nonce for this one. The one on the left is the
baby powder. That's disgusting. Right, the One Piece. Okay,
you've got to read the text for this. This is legendary.
Because one is enough when it's you. Show where you're headed in the ultimate fashion climax. Fits so tight it shows all you got. You're a walking turn on and treats your body as well as she does. Easy on, easy off, quick as a flick of her tongue. Sexy, cool, crinkle cloth for those hot nights to come. Designed with your desires in mind, she'll eat you alive in it. The Big Zip, in at 50% polyester, 50% cotton. Long sleeved in rust, blue or black. Short sleeved in natural blue or camel. Are you man enough to fill it?
So I love this. I mean, this is pure euphemism. The idea that, you know, if you wear this, you'll become kind of some kind of sexual being. The man himself is holding a large pole in his hand. You know, just some of those lines. You know, it's easy to get off. You know, it shows everything you've got. She'll eat you up. Absolutely terrible. But
we have to crowd fund this for a young Red Hawk.
We'll find one. I bet we can find it in the vintage store somewhere. Please, Americans, have a look in any kind of thrift stores for a 5th season easy piece. Let's finish off on the orgasmic chicken as the last one, which is quite funny. If you just scroot through to the right, I'll tell you where to go. Is there no other ones? Oh, did that come through? Okay, maybe it's not worked.
Somehow
there you go.
That hasn't worked. Is that it?
Yeah. Well, there we go. The BK Super 7-inch, it'll blow your mind away. I mean, this is just dreadful. But again, there's actually a surprisingly large number of euphemistic adverts out there that are just so unbelievably obvious. There is other stuff about the kind of the dog whistle where you're putting in certain words which will appeal to a certain audience or have certain meaning that those in the know will understand. So again, you're kind of building up that trust in the brand at the same time. But anyway, I think that's we can finish on that maybe. That there was more on the deck, but I think I'm gonna leave it for today. I think that's enough.
Well, thank you very much. Fascinating as ever, Pharaoh. There has been one. I think there was one super chat I saw, so we can very quickly do this before you go.
Yeah, that's fine.
Let me just get it up. Hold on. That's not a euphemism. It was Port Film Co-op. He says propaganda can be the best art. Top Gun, Rocky 4. Yeah, I mean, I have said that the Reagan era US propaganda was just fucking world class. Especially for a young boy growing up in the 80s, it was just phenomenal. A-Team, Rocky, He-Man was phenomenal. American propaganda. They were very good at that moment.
Yeah, I think they've gotten a lot worse. I think that's the one observation. It's a lot less subtle. It's kind of like the Funky as Disco. What was the brand again? Frisky as Disco.
Yeah. Funky as Disco. Yeah.
It's that kind of level. And then the other thing I would say is that again, I'm happy to use propaganda. You know, I don't think it's an intrinsically bad thing. It's to what ends. You've always got to ask that question. What is that person trying to make me do? I think there's harmless stuff. I think, you know, the Coke in the refreshment break, I don't care about. Getting people to change bigger lifestyle habits or to move people to other stuff, that's where it gets dangerous. And I think that's what we've done is we've said that everything's okay and there's no controls on anything, and then all that's happened is the money power has come in and said, I've got the most money, I can move the most people through advertising, I can control behavior itself. And I think that's the danger we have.
Yes, the eunuch says you were right. I did like what the Tide ad had to say. Makes me proud to use Tide pride worldwide.
If we can make like Tide like a dog whistle, that'd be hilarious. You know. Are you a Tide fan?
Chris Primer says, our minds so blank, so open, that any thought he placed there became our thoughts. Our minds so empty like a sponge, needing thoughts, begging, empty, loneliness, so lonely to be sitting there empty, wanting. So
I wonder if that's like a passage from somewhere. Like I said, I think different people have different like mental strengths, if that makes sense. You know, people that are more intelligent, that are better read, are less susceptible to things. And I think anyone listening to this stream is probably like not that susceptible, if that makes sense. And I think certain personality types keep you away from that. But I think on average people are susceptible to a certain degree. Like I said, that depending on what you're trying to get them to do, I don't think they will do it. But you can get pretty damn far.
Spasticus Autisticus says people called Socrates a gadfly, a literal bugman. And he was ugly too. Horwitz, Feinberg and Horwitz says, great name. Will this be about print ads? Will you go into iconic TV commercials? No, it was about print, wasn't it, Pharaoh?
Yeah.
We have done many streams on TV ads before.
TV stuff in the past. You got to look into the archive, deep into the archives, Deepest Lore 20 or whatever, really, really far back. There's some gems though. But we were talking about maybe doing a Christmas ads stream.
We'll do Christmas ads again, yeah.
So that's always good.
Find the dispensation from your duties as a new father.
Yes, thank you.
I will just mention before we go that I have a special show coming up. I'm pulling double duty today, and I'm doing a second show when Deepest Lore usually is in about half an hour, maybe 45 minutes. We'll see. But I'm doing a one-off kind of series called Under the Microscope, where I'm going to review the videos of a guy called Anglo Otho, just see what we find. I'm going to do some live reviews. So if
is this the Twitter beef guy, or is it a different Otho?
He's a mate. This guy Anglo Otho has made a series of 4 videos where he appears to be sliding back into a bit of boomer truth or liberalism, and I mean I don't know because I haven't watched them yet. Right, and I thought it'd just be interesting to really have a look at what he's saying there, and to see if there are any valid points, and also to counter anything that's obviously cringe. I look
forward to it. It sounds great, and I like this idea of like the one-off shots and looking at other videos and stuff. So cool.
Yeah, I also for the very first time in my life, Pharaoh actually put effort into the front cover for it. Let me just show you. let me just show you this front cover, because I actually, I mean, given that it's usually a screen grab of a Google thing or whatever, what do you think? What do you think of that? There's cool. Anglo Otho. Yeah. There's a kind of
microscope. That's really good.
And there's me on the side of the box. So
there we go.
Anything you'd like to promote before you go?
No, just the course. Buy it now. There's loads of really useful stuff inside there. Even if you're working in another job, I think you'd get something out of it. And also, it's the Christmas season. Have you thought about gifting? What present are you going to buy your younger brother? What about getting something for your mum who runs a small business? Now's the perfect time to buy a foundations gift. It doesn't have to be foundations of entrepreneurship. If you what's the lowest price course you have, AA?
Foundations of Research, £50. It's a very good entry point.
Yeah, exactly. That's with the 25% code. It's the perfect stocking filler this year.
Basically, giving it away.
Exactly. So just buy it now. I'm going to try and do some art streams soon on my channel. So also like and subscribe this video and check out my channel as well. But I think that's it. So thank you very much for having me on.
Promo code merit.
Merit, pure merit, such merit, 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 merit, such merit.